Have you ever noticed how the same event can be described in completely different ways? One person sees a crisis, another sees an opportunity. That's not just a matter of opinion. There's actually a system at work, an invisible architecture that shapes our world.
So, how does this invisible architecture really work? Well, here's our roadmap. We're going to start with the basic structure, then look at the tools of the trade, see where it all happens, understand the real-world consequences, and finally, take a peek at what's coming next. So, what are we really talking about here? It's so much more than just political speeches and campaign ads. It's the entire ecosystem of how we discuss, debate, and ultimately decide on the ideas that govern our lives. When you boil it all down, political communication is the process that regulates our relationships with each other. It's what determines who has a voice in society, whose problems get taken seriously, and, really, who gets a seat at the table. This system is what makes some issues noisy. They become these urgent public crises that demand our attention. Meanwhile, other issues, which might be just as important, stay quiet, just simmering in the background. Things like populist rhetoric can really crank up the volume on certain topics, making them impossible for anyone to ignore. So, what are the actual tools in this ecosystem? How is this influence really wielded? Well, it all starts with the words we choose, the stories we tell, and how we frame the world around us. Take the power of framing, for instance. This is huge. The source material shows how media narratives during the pandemic constructed immigration through two completely different lenses. The exact same group of people can be portrayed as a danger we should fear or a vulnerable population we need to protect. It all depends on the frame. And recognizing these frames is absolutely critical for understanding the information we see every day. And here's another key tool. You've got populist rhetoric, which kind of bypasses the old gatekeepers and speaks directly to the people against some perceived elite. Then you have traditional rhetoric, which leans on experts and institutions for its authority. We see this contrast play out all the time, everywhere, from election campaigns to debates over history. And this gets to a really crucial point. Language is never neutral. As this quote points out, policymakers can use specific terms to define groups, reinforce power structures, and basically set the terms of the debate before it even gets started. Now, you might think this all just happens in government buildings or on cable news, but the real story is so much bigger than that. This communication is happening all around us, often in some pretty unexpected places. Think about it. It's in how faith leaders talk about social issues. It's in the narratives around huge sporting events, what some people call sports washing. It's even in the arguments on your local community app. Art, music, university classrooms, these are all arenas where our political understanding gets shaped. Okay, so we see these tools at work in all these different arenas, but so what? Why does it really matter? Well, it matters because this discourse doesn't just stay talk. It directly shapes our world, from government policy all the way to our own sense of who we are. Let's see how that happens. This is a perfect example of the process in action. An issue like air pollution might start with just a few people sharing their experiences, personal grievances. But then, through shared stories, media attention, and advocacy, it builds into this powerful public narrative. It becomes politically impossible to ignore and eventually leads to real policy change. And the impact here is incredibly broad. This exact same process of narrative building affects the official story of historical events, like the Katy Massacre. It's used to define national identity, like we've seen in Quebec. And it can even influence legal reforms by shaping how the public understands things like wrongful convictions. And that brings us to our final piece of the puzzle. Where is all of this heading? Because, let's be real, it's impossible to talk about political communication today without looking at how new technologies are fundamentally changing the entire landscape. The rise of social media has created this digital public square that's unlike anything we've ever seen before. Sure, it's connected us in new ways, but it's also brought enormous challenges. It's created fragmented echo chambers and fueled polarization through things like hate speech, reckless digital attacks, and the crazy fast spread of conspiracy theories. This leads us to a central tension that the source material really highlights. Are these new technologies a grave threat to democracy, just amplifying our worst impulses? Or are they its salvation, offering new tools for transparency and public engagement? Right now, that debate is very much alive, and the answer is far from clear. And that leaves us with the ultimate takeaway. The tools are changing, the arenas are expanding, but the fundamental contest? It's the same. The power to shape our shared reality through communication is constantly up for grabs. The question for all of us is, who's going to wield that power, and to what end?